The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Diet, about their physical activity, about the way that they live their lives. We think that wearables are a key to the MAHA agenda, making America healthy again, and we are going to, my vision is that every American is wearing a wearable within 4 years.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Following up.
Good morning, America. Good morning, world. Good morning, CHD. Welcome once again. My name is Michael Kane. I am the founder of Teachers for Choice. Today, we are going to be talking about wearables, incentives for the health data trap. After Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who I love and admire so much, I'm so happy he is where he is. But after he put out this statement, I was a little shocked. And right away, I put out a tweet over at Teachers for Choice saying, hard no, I have never worn a Fitbit and never will. And I will never have any wearable on my body, as is my God-given right as not only an American, but as a human and as a spiritual being. That post got a lot of love. A lot of people in our movement feel very similarly, feel the same way. And one of the people that has been educating me on this new health technology ecosystem, we're going to get into that, is Aimee from Firsthand Media. She has this excellent Substack out. RFK Jr. wants wearables for every American. Color me unsurprised. Aimee certainly was unsurprised by this because she's been talking about this for a long time and how there are benefits to the data that they're looking to get through wearables and through the whole system of health rate records and making that interoperable, because you can see what health outcomes are. You can see what pharmaceutical products are dangerous quickly. But then there's the civil liberties side to it as well, too. So after the news, we're going to be bringing Aimee on to just go over that article, go over what is the health technology ecosystem and what do we need to do about this. This is an important one for the grassroots and for people. This isn't something that like, oh, we got this, we got our elected people in, this one's going to happen. No, that's not the situation. This is one where we, the people, need to react and act up. Speaking of we the people, here in New York City, the big news is Zohran Mamdani won the Democratic nomination for mayor, and everyone's saying the mayoral election now looks like Zohran Mamdani versus Eric Adams. Zohran is a Democratic socialist. He shocked everyone by beating Andrew Cuomo in the Democratic primary. Now, actually, John McCarry, a good friend of mine and police officer, had Zohran on just a month or two ago on his show and asked him, where does he stand on fired, unvaccinated workers being reinstated? And Zohran said plainly and clearly, no, he will not rehire fired, unvaccinated workers. He will not compensate us. He is 100% against us. And that is the now Democratic nominee for mayor in New York City. This is making national news all over the place. And since people, I don't know if this is true, but right now people are framing it, well, it's either going to be Zohran or it's going to be Mayor Eric Adams. Those are your only choices. I don't know if that's true. But since that has happened, shout out to Jamel Holly. Jamel Holly just put out a tweet to Eric Adams saying, it is my firm conviction with result certainty that now is an opportune moment for New York City Mayor Eric Adams to address an ongoing challenge at a pivotal juncture for New York City. I respectfully urge him to direct the city's legal team to settle or withdraw all cases against NYC educators, firefighters, police officers, sanitation workers, and medical professionals who lost their jobs for exercising their religious or medical exemptions to the city's previous public health directives where appropriate. So this is very cool. Jamel Holly was a former mayor and assemblyman in New Jersey. He knows Eric Adams personally, and he decided to put that out. So we got a lot of traction with this. A lot of people in our movement were putting it all over X, all over Twitter. And Curtis Sliwa's campaign retweeted it. Curtis Sliwa is the only candidate in the race who has committed to righting this wrong. There you see a picture of the 20,000 first responders who marched against vaccine mandates back in 2021 when this was announced. Curtis Sliwa is running as the Republican in this race, and he has pledged to reinstate and compensate fired unvaccinated workers. We actually have a clip of him where my good friend Rose Angel from Cafecito Break caught him on the street and asked him about this question. Let's show that clip.
Teachers, municipal hospital workers, firefighters, cops, sanitation workers, all the people who are out there, the TWU workers, remember, the motorman conductors, the track workers, the maintenance people, the token booth clerks died at a horrific rate, got sick at a horrific rate. We're not recognizing them. Well, guess what? All those zeros become heroes again when I'm the mayor of the city of New York.
Thank you.
Well, so there you have it. Curtis Sliwa firmly on the side of fired unvaccinated workers, reinstating and compensating them. There is one other candidate in the race right now who has also said he supports fired unvaccinated workers. That is Jim Walden. Jim Walden is also running as an independent in this race. I actually had him on CHD TV many months ago. He came on. We had a great conversation, and he was very early to jump onto this issue. So there you go. There's a little lay of the land of what's happening in New York City and how it affects medical freedom. And this race has now been raised to national news. People are freaking out if Zoran Mamdani can win, and some people are saying, well, it just doesn't matter. We just have to beat Zoran no matter what. It's going to be interesting. We will be covering it here from a medical freedom perspective. Children's Health Defense does not endorse nor oppose any candidate, but we do closely analyze and watch all developments as they relate to medical freedom. One other interesting announcement in that New York City just had their primaries. One interesting announcement, Brad Hoylman won Manhattan Borough president. And this means he's leaving Albany. Now, this is significant because in Albany, Brad Hoylman was able to pass many bills that thwarted medical freedom, including repealing the religious exemption of vaccination for children back in 2019. He will no longer be able to do any of that. Now, as Manhattan Borough president, it's a local office that has almost no impact on public health law. So bye-bye, Brad. Bye-bye. Have fun in Manhattan. You don't have to travel, commute those 3 to 6 hours up to Albany anymore. Be close to your family. Enjoy Manhattan, Mr. Hoylman. Okay, so now I want to switch. We just kind of went to New York City stuff. I want to go into this health technology ecosystem information. One of the things that was, while everyone was fighting in our movement about Casey Means being the Surgeon General, we had this huge shakeup that sucked the air out of the room of every other conversation. Right when that was happening, Jim O'Neill was confirmed as the number 2 at HHS. There he is right there, Jim O'Neill with his hand on the Bible, I believe it is, being sworn in by Secretary Kennedy. It is very interesting that Jim O'Neill has very close ties to Palantir. He has been in I'd call it the medical deep state in Washington, D.C. for 20 years, dating back to George W. Bush. And that HHS, which was a very significant HHS, that's when the anthrax letter showed up. That's when there was a mandate for military members to have an experimental anthrax vaccine put on them. Well, Jim O'Neill had a front seat to all of that and has been in this, I'll call it the medical deep state, for the past 20 years. One of the things, right as he got confirmed, there was this request for public comment that went out. Health technology ecosystem. We could submit a public comment. You can't now. And what did I say? I said no digital ID, no forced biometric access, no forced wearable technology. I only learned about this because Aimee posted this. on to her blog. Nowhere else did I see this except for at Firsthand Media. And with that, let's bring on Aimee to start this conversation. Aimee, thank you so much for coming on with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So before we get into your excellent report, actually, Lou, let's show that report, the RFK report again, that you just posted up on Substack, covering what's happening with this whole wearable controversy and such. I want to talk about this public comment request related to the health technology ecosystem. How did you find this? Where did this come from? Because literally, and listen, I suck in a lot of news, right? I mean, I take in a lot of stuff. The only place I saw this anywhere was from you. How did you find this?
As usual, this kind of thing was covered, this particular request for information was covered in the health sector press, but not at all in the general, the media for the general public. So, I came upon it in health sector coverage. So if you watch YouTube commentators who talk about health IT, or even people, I think there's a growing group of people from within the health IT industry who are on Substack. Certainly the publications, health sector publications like KFF and all those kinds of publications will have been covering this and talking about it, because you get lots of industry players submitting comments on an RFI like this. All of the stakeholders, as they say, from the health sector are going to be submitting comments, but there was no consumer media coverage of it. So because I look at the health sector media, that's where I came across it and reported on it for a general audience, because I think that, the public should be able to submit comments, as well as the industry, quote unquote, stakeholders.
Yeah, and we're stakeholders too. We're the most important stakeholders in the situation in all reality. And I greatly appreciate you flagging that. I got it out on the Teachers for Choice Substack. I think we got a couple hundred people to comment. We didn't get thousands though. Like at the end, I believe there were 700 in total. I think we made up a couple hundred of those. Leslie Manukian from Health Freedom Defense Fund was able to get a comment in. Mary Holland tried to, but was just too busy and didn't get it in because she found out like 2 days beforehand, right? So it was really unfortunate that it went down that way. One of the things that I put up there that I said, I had like 4 real pillars and very basic, and what my comment was no mandatory wearables. Some people still laugh at me about that a wearable could be mandatory. They say, so it's choice. You have complete choice whether to put a wearable on, whether not to put a wearable on. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about that and a little bit about this new report that you just broke that does an excellent job of giving an overview on this really, really deep topic. A lot of people are just hearing about this now for the first time in my audience. Why don't you just give us a little backdrop?
On the wearables article. So as we both know, there was this comment that RFK Jr. made at one of the hearings this past week. And he said that he wanted to see every American with a wearable within 4 years. And a lot of people were taken aback by that and surprised by it. And then there were some people who said, oh, no, I told you so. I saw this coming. And it is the influence of Cali Means and Casey Means and maybe other technology sector players who have an interest in profiting from the rollout of certain technologies, who are, influencing RFK Jr.'s administration within HHS. So I wrote this article to kind of provide a third perspective on this, which is my perspective. My perspective is that I'm not at all surprised that he's supporting wearables, but it's not because of the meanses. Although I'm sure they have influence. I'm not completely discounting those concerns, but I don't think that that's why he's embracing this technology. I think it's because out of the gate, even, beginning with his Senate confirmation hearing, he has consistently embraced supported, promoted technological solutions that rely on a great deal of data, data collection, and a free flow of health data. And what he's doing is he's really accelerating. All of the things that he's rolling out are accelerating a process that was begun a long time ago to create a fully interoperable health information infrastructure. People call it an ecosystem. That's what it was called in the RFI. I tend to prefer calling it an infrastructure because it's actually not a natural thing. We're not talking about ecology here. We're talking about machines and data. So, but this infrastructure has been under construction for, you could argue, decades. The big marker for it is the 2016 21st Century Cures Act, which set which really formalized the process and created a timeline for that rollout. And so wearables are, I think, part of that health data infrastructure that's coming to fruition now, that's being kind of completed. And the article that I wrote, though, the wearables was in the title, and it's what got a lot of people's attention. But the article was actually about two comments or announcements over the past week from HHS, and the other one was about prior authorization. So we should touch on the announcement there, because what they're doing with prior authorization is also an advance of an acceleration of this process of rolling out this new health information infrastructure.
So why don't you get into that a little bit? What sections related to the prior authorization are going to have an impact on this kind of streamlining of data that you're talking about?
So prior authorizations, so this is when you go to the doctor and the doctor says you have problem X and you need procedure Y, but we have to find out if your insurance will pay for it. So the doctor's office submits to the insurance, and then the insurance, whatever it is, whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, or a commercial health plan, they can take a few weeks, maybe. They can take an extended period of time to give the prior authorization, the authorization for you to go ahead and have whatever it is the doctor wants you to have. This is a big problem. Everyone hates it, except maybe, I don't know how the insurance industry feels about it, but it costs healthcare systems a lot of money. Doctors hate it. And obviously it's bad for patients because, you need something done. You don't want to wait a month to find out whether you can actually have the treatment or the medicine or whatever it is. So what they announced this past week, it was Dr. Oz, who had CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. They announced in a press conference that not only Medicare and Medicaid, but a whole group of commercial insurance plans will be streamlining their process for prior authorizations. And they're doing this. The key thing that they're doing is they're agreeing to use FHIR, which is FHIR, for Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources. And that's a health information data exchange standard. So once they all get on the same standard, they can exchange data very quickly, efficiently, and do the prior authorizations much more quickly. So the thing is, this deadline, this was already underway. This is something that was required by something called the CMS final rule, which is kind of, after there's major legislation, there's then a series of regulatory documents that follow that to kind of hash out all the details of implementation. And the CMS final rule did that for It's one of the regulatory documents that followed the 21st Century Cures Act. So it's part of this rollout of the whole infrastructure, and FHIR is really key to that, this data exchange standard. Once everyone gets on FHIR, the data can flow freely throughout this Internet of Health data, right? So what I think RFK Jr.'s administration did is they accelerated this process. CMS, Medicare, Medicaid was already on a deadline to implement FHIR for prior authorizations. It was 2026, and I think they moved it up to 2027. And what RFK Jr.'s administration did is they expanded that to include the commercial health plans. So it'll be, the result will be presumably good for everyone concerned, for patients, for doctors, for healthcare systems. You won't have this stupid, inefficient prior authorization system anymore. But this is an integral part of this new health data infrastructure, as are wearables.
So Aimee, you brought up an important word actually that I heard, excuse me, you brought up an important word that I heard just last week or the week before also, acceleration. And in that, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., as Secretary of HHS, put out a tweet where he coined a new term, MABA, Make American Biotech Accelerate. Here was the tweet that he put out there, talking about how America needs to be on top of all of the biotechnology that is coming out and not be left behind. Before the show came on, I said, Aimee, what exactly is this even about? Because if you look in the comments of this tweet, it's one of Kennedy's least popular tweets ever. Everybody's just like, no, 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 no. But this actually, what you were telling me is that biotech isn't just syringes and products. It actually is all hinged on data. Why don't you talk to that a little?
So part of this new ecosystem infrastructure is the interoperability of clinical data with research data, so that data from clinical data is our medical records, right? That it will be in the same system as research data, and it'll be easier to, or streamlined to be able to contribute clinical data, or even real-time live data from wearables to biomedical research. The data will be free-flowing. Now, I'm not saying that it's a free-for-all. There are all sorts of consent structures built into this, right? It's not just like anyone can get on there and use your clinical data for any study. There are things that you have to consent to, but technically that hasn't been possible. So creating this whole system that includes clinical data, biomedical research data, live data from wearables that are gathering information about people's health, and the public health system, public health data, all of this will be interoperable, interconnected.
So, talking about wearables and consent, people have really pushed back on me when I talk about mandatory wearables, and they're like, "That's ridiculous. Don't put it on. Don't buy the product." Well, back in 2018, West Virginia teachers went on strike because Fitbits were actually made mandatory as a part of their health insurance. And let's show that clip of a teacher explaining this.
When I first began teaching in 2012, the insurance, in my opinion, was excellent because I had worked for 1 year in Kentucky and I knew that their premiums were, although they were being paid $5,000 to $7,000 more per year than we were, then they still had to pay much more for their insurance. So it balanced out. However, after the first year or two that I was there, then was when they started coming at us with the tax on our insurance. First of all, the premiums, we started to see slight increases, for one. And another was they enforced this Healthy Tomorrows policy. So the next thing you know, we get a paper in the mail that says, you know, you have to go to a doctor by such and such date. It must be reported. Your blood glucose levels must be at a certain amount. Your waist size must be a certain amount. And if it is not, you don't meet all these stipulations, then you get a $500 penalty on your out-of-pocket deductible. So luckily for me, I eat everything I want, but I was healthy. My wife, on the other hand, who eats much better than I do, salads almost every meal, has high cholesterol, so she gets that $500 slapped on her just like that. Okay, so that was how they started out. In the meantime, we have been filling these out for a year or two, and they keep saying, you know, you have to go back every year and be checked. And then comes the event that awoke the sleeping giants. The PEIA board, which is our public employee insurance agency that represents the state of West Virginia, it's just a board of 4 to 5 individuals that are appointed by the governor. They're not elected. They have no one that they answer to. They just come up with these things on their own. So they come to us and they say, we're raising your premiums. This was somewhere between November and December of this past year. We're raising your premiums. You're going to now be enrolled in a program called Go 365, which means that you have to wear a Fitbit, and you have to also as well, you have to record all of your steps, you have to check in with them, and it included private questions like how much sexual activity do you perform in a week, is it vigorous, all of these things that they wanted us to report on our personal lives, and that was all included, okay? In addition to that, we had to report all those things, and if we refused to wear that Fitbit, report all of our steps, or if we didn't make our steps, we were going to be charged an additional $25 per month.
Yes. So there you go. This is 2018. This is pre-COVID. No one knew that the state of West Virginia made a real, true legal attempt to mandate Fitbits, that people had to wear Fitbits in order to access healthcare. And this comes to incentives and incentivizing, right? Because what I see, Aimee, and I really want your opinion on this, is they're not going to mandate Fitbits. That's not what's going to come. But if you want a 40% reduction on your insurance premiums, if you just get this Fitbit, well, and you wear it, well, then you are going to be eligible for these new incentives, for this new sharing, for this new cost deduction that we will offer to you. That's what I see on the horizon when I hear one of my heroes, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., say in 4 years, he hopes every American is wearing a wearable. What's your comment? What do you think about that?
So I think those kinds of incentive structures were rolled out long before wearables, actually. I don't know if you remember years ago, Whole Foods, before they were even bought by Amazon, they started an incentive program where they were giving their employees benefits for having a certain BMI, for quitting smoking. They were doing this incentive program, and it was a little bit controversial. And at the time I thought, wow, this is really bad because it's a penalty for people who don't do those things, who don't have the right BMI or who don't quit smoking. And so I think that you can have that kind of incentive program and disincentive program, penalty program, with or without wearables. Wearables could certainly be a part of that. And I completely agree with you that requiring that be optional to use a wearable, and also to use biometrics, I think that's a really important right for people to assert
Yes.
in this context. I think biometrics are rolling out faster than even I expected. And I think we've just you and I have talked in the past about my view on biometrics, which is that you should be able to opt out of using them without losing care or being penalized. And we're seeing more and more biometric use and access related to healthcare.
Yeah, that's so important. We're going to be addressing this fuller and wider in terms of actions, because action is going to be needed to maintain these rights that right now seem like, of course, they should be there. But when you talk about biometric access, that makes me think about a clip that I first saw from you at Firsthand Media of Larry Ellison, multi-billionaire, founder of Oracle, who talked, and Oracle being omnipresent in healthcare today, talking about how this year, 2025, there's not going to be any more passwords. Let's show that clip.
The interface, and I'll stop with this one, the interface to the system is not typing away and having menus. If you want to pull up someone's x-rays, you say the following: show me Larry Ellison's most recent x-rays. Actually, you say, Oracle, show me Larry Ellison's most recent x-rays. But you speak to the system. You speak to it. When you show up at the system looks at you. You don't log in. The system looks at you and says, hello, Dr. Bell, what can I do for you today? It recognizes you. The authentication is biometric. We're getting rid of all passwords. By sometime next year, you will not be able to use a password to log into any Oracle system, because they're too easily stolen. They're not secure. Instead, we'll have biometric authentication that just recognizes you and logs you in based on that. Much easier to do and much safer.
Much easier to do and much safer. When he said by next year, he was talking in 2024. That means this year. That means he's saying there will be no passwords to access an Oracle system sometime this year. Aimee, what does that mean? What is an Oracle system? Who does that impact? Does that impact just doctors, the consumer, and where are we at in the timeline with that?
So I don't know exactly where Oracle is. And I assume that what he meant when he said he meant Oracle, the company, which encompasses, much more than just Oracle Health, which is, Oracle bought Cerner, which is, if people know Epic, if you use a My Health system, that's Epic. That's where all of your medical records are stored and accessible to you. So Cerner was a big competitor to Epic. Oracle bought it, and that became Oracle Health. So when he talks about Oracle, I assume he means all of Oracle, including Oracle Health, for all of their employees to be using biometric systems, but maybe other users to be using biometric systems. Biometrics and ambient listening are things that are moving into the clinical setting now. So, if you go to NYU Langone, the big hospital system here in New York, you can sign into your appointment with your palm, just like at a Whole Foods store. Because they're using Amazon One, the same kind of biometric system that you can use to pay for your groceries through Amazon. You can sign into your medical appointment at NYU Langone with the same technology by scanning your palm. So there are biometric access tools like that being rolled out. If you access your My Health, your health records, your medical records stored by Epic through your phone, which you can do. Maybe you're using your face to log into that phone. Apple Health, it has support for FHIR that I was talking about, fast healthcare interoperability resources. So the same standard, you might be using biometric tools on your Apple Watch or your smartphone, and soon I think you'll be able to, because the same standard is supported, you'll be able to upload that information to your medical records, you know. Um, so there are a lot of biometrics coming into healthcare and healthcare access. There's also the ambient listening that I was mentioning, where you have a system listening to your medical appointment and then automatically generating notes and coding the information that is captured, and pulling in decision support generated by AI for healthcare providers. So there are a lot of systems like that coming into play, and I think that the RFK Jr. administration is fully supporting all of this. But I hope that he'll also be open to hearing from people who want to make sure that our rights in this new context are preserved. Our right to opt out of using those systems. If you want to go to NYU Langone right now, you don't have to use the palm scan.
Right.
But what about in the future?
Yeah, and so
we want
one
to
of the things,
preserve that right.
and one of the things that you added with ambient listening and with data being sucked in from us all over the place and at our own doctor's office, we might not even be fully aware. The right to be forgotten, right? The right to opt out, to not have to use these systems. And then the right, once I have used the system, I want this information forgotten. I don't want that little personal conversation I had with my doctor right now about an intimate detail in my life stored forever in the internet of the health data ecosystem. And thank you for saying health data infrastructure. I'm going to make sure I start doing that, because there's nothing there's nothing natural about this. This is a man-made artificial intelligent construct. We're a little over on time, but I want to play one more clip and get your comment on this. One of the defining events and moments of my life was Defeat the Mandates in Washington, D.C., where 40,000 people came together and said no to the mandates. I helped to plan that event with Children's Health Defense and other amazing people around the country at that time. You quote a really important quote from Defeat the Mandates in your article that we've been talking about. But let's show that quote right now.
Even in Hitler's Germany, you could cross the Alps into Switzerland. You can hide in an attic like Anne Frank did. Today, the mechanisms are being put in place that will make it so none of us can run and none of us can hide.
So that none of us can run and none of us can hide. Aimee, why don't you have the last word and take us out on this segment?
Okay, so there's one thing that I think is really important to understand as well, and that is the fact that the kind of information that can be included in your medical records, in your health information database, if you will, has expanded and is continuing to expand, especially with the addition of something called social determinants of health data. And this is information about factors in your life that might influence your health, but they can be about kind of anything. Do you get along with your boss? What kind of transportation do you have? Do you have a stressful job? Just granular details about every aspect of your life can be encoded. So we really have to think about the fact that so many more details of our life can be encoded in health information that is stored about us in this new internet of health information. And we have to think about what kind of rights we want to assert, legal rights to limit the kind of information that's stored about us and give us control over how it's used.
Aimee with Firsthand Media, thank you so much for coming on. We're definitely going to have you back again, because we've done some educating. Action is next. We're going to have to start pointing people and telling people what to do, who to call, where to go, because no one's coming to save us from this one. This one is we the people. Nobody else is going to do it. Everybody should subscribe. Firsthandmedia.substack.com, and definitely start by reading this article. RFK Jr. wants wearables for every American. Color me unsurprised. Aimee, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for all your wisdom, and keep doing what you're doing. We'll have you back soon.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you. I want to make a little commentary. I've seen some people, even people respected in the medical freedom movement, saying RFK Jr. needs to resign, saying he's doing this terrible job. I fully reject that. I fully reject that. No one should take this show or the fact that I'm covering this or that CHD platform this for us saying in any way that we are against Bobby Kennedy and the MAHA agenda. What I'm doing is competing on what MAHA means, right? We need to have that conversation. But this idea that Bobby Kennedy shouldn't be Secretary of HHS, who should? Who's waiting in the wings? Who else do we have? If we don't have Bobby Kennedy there, Ben Carson is probably the most likely candidate. And then everything that Bobby Kennedy has achieved is gone. So that's very important. And let's just remember some of the things. Bobby created the MAHA Commission. He declared autism an epidemic after some 30, 40 years of it being ignored. He fired 17 ACIP members with conflicts of interest, hiring Robert Malone, Martin Kulldorff, and Vicky Pebsworth, and more into the committee to have a real honest conversation around what's happening with vaccinations. He fired specific bad actors, most notably Dr. Peter Marks, and he removed the COVID shot from healthy kids and pregnant women, and more importantly, moved it into shared clinical decision-making, which people don't really realize how critically important that is. I wanted to state some of those amazing things because Bobby Kennedy has political capital to do those things. We helped give that to him. We helped give that to him over the years and decades of all the work that we've done. On this data thing, this was baked into the cake before Bobby ever showed up. This is a freight train that is running down the mountain, and that people like Jim O'Neill, people like companies like Palantir, when J.D. Vance was tapped to be vice president back, 10, 11 months ago, however long ago it was, so many of us said, oh my God, Palantir. Whitney Webb said, this is a sign that Palantir is going to be right in the executive office. Bobby Kennedy doesn't have the political capital to handle this. Only we do. Only the people do. Don't scapegoat him. Don't blame him. He doesn't have the power on this one. We have the power on this one, and we need to exercise it to make a difference on this critical issue, and we will be doing that. Don't go anywhere. Coming up right now, we've just kicked off July, and here at CHD TV, July is going to be dedicated to the stories of the unvaccinated. So right now, we're going to be showing Vaxxed II, the portion of Vaxxed II that deals with unvaccinated individuals. Check it out right now.
You've never met a parent who regretted not vaccinating, but you meet hundreds of thousands who do.
So we took a break after the first leg, and we all had time to reflect on what had just happened with this amazing amount of people turning up to tell their stories. And that's when we suddenly realised the unvaccinated people are there for a reason. We need to start the second leg interviewing them as well.
They're not doing vaccinated versus unvaccinated studies because they're frightened of the results. If you did a vaccinated versus unvaccinated study, we know what's going to happen. The entire vaccine program would come into question.
They won't do the vax-unvax study. We, the people, are going to go out there and see for ourselves. What are the unvaccinated like? We know what the injured are like. Let's now look into the world of the unvaccinated.
Look at all the unvaccinated children that are alive. Extraordinary. Hi guys. Hi. Hi. All right, so is there anybody here that's had a vaccination? Mommy and Daddy have had a vaccine, but none of you children, not one.
I mean, they have amazing immune systems. When they get sick, we get over it in one day.
Both of my kids are really, really healthy.
Health-wise, she's insanely healthy. I mean, she never gets sick.
They're both insanely intelligent. Their
health is ridiculous.
And they recover fast from things.
My kids are super healthy.
They are very healthy kids.
They have traveled to many places. My kids have gone to Nicaragua. You can't get more third world country than that, trust me.
With no vaccines.
With no vaccines.
I have super healthy, great, unvaccinated kids.
How is all your health?
Well, we're all healthy, and I've never been to a doctor for any reason except a broken arm and a neuromuscular injury.
I have 3 grown children. They're all grown up. And did you vaccinate your children?
No, I did not. They're all completely unvaccinated. I can probably count on one hand how many times they've had to go to the doctor in their entire life.
I have 15 or 16, I can't keep track, 15 or 16 nieces and nephews, and none of them have received vaccines, and they're all very healthy kids as well.
10 grandchildren, 4 great-grandchildren, 5th one on the way who will not be vaccinated either. They're all extremely healthy.
They're all so healthy. It's like they don't have asthma. It's like they're not sick all the time. They get a cold and they get over it.
Every time we've been in a situation where my kids have the same thing that the kid next door has, their symptoms are night and day. They fare so much better and heal so much quicker.
I've probably been sick once this year, and it was just a cold. I had a stuffy nose, and it lasted for like 2 days.
Even his friends who are partially vaccinated are sicker in general. My kid has missed like maybe a handful of days from kindergarten to 6th grade.
My other friend who has a daughter who is also unvaccinated, I saw her at school, and so I kind of whispered to her, I'm like, so how many days of school has your child missed? And she went, and I said, mine too.
It was so blatant that these children were super, super healthy.
I had never seen health like that. I didn't know that health like that was even possible. Not needing antibiotics in one's entire life.
I've never had an antibiotic in my life. 48 years old, never had an antibiotic, ever.
He's 16 years old, no allergies, no rashes, no ear infection, no colic, no antibiotics.
She's never had an over-the-counter medication, not once.
Neither one has ever had a shot, Tylenol, aspirin, antibiotic.
No antibiotic.
Neither of them, apart from that, have had any antibiotics or any meds.
She has never had an antibiotic.
My daughter had an infected toe, and she had antibiotics once for that, but that's been it.
People that I know that do vaccinate, I know their kids have seems to me more health problems. I mean, my kids don't really have any, definitely no chronic health problems. They've never been on pharmaceuticals. They've never needed, they've gone to the doctor for broken bones, which is why it's one thing I like doctors for.
The totally unvaccinated kids are always the most healthy ones. So my daughter also had like 3 ear infections before she was 6 months old. After that 6-month appointment and we stopped, she hasn't had one since then.
Nothing. She was perfectly healthy.
Robust health.
Yeah.
She's never had an ear infection. Neither of them have, actually.
What about ear infections?
No.
Because you're 14, you must have had at least one ear infection in your life.
No.
My daughter is now 12 and has never had one single ear infection.
Ear infections?
No, none of my kids have had ear infections at all.
Whatever?
No, none of them.
See the number of children in these unvaccinated populations that have never even had an ear infection. I mean, I can't imagine that. My son was a walking ear infection. All we did was toss antibiotics down his throat in order to keep the ear infections at bay. And now you have these children who are unvaccinated, and the significant, large proportion of them have never seen an ear infection. That is just nigh into incredible.
I mean, our expectation was that these children were going to be constantly sick, that their immune systems were just not supported. The reality was completely the opposite of that.
You have no vaccine at all?
Never. I'm in my 60s. I've never been vaccinated for anything.
Anything at all?
No, and then I had 2 kids that are now 28 and 30, and they were never vaccinated.
This is Palmer, he's 6. He's been sick maybe 4 days his entire life.
Never had any mumps, measles, chickenpox,
eczema, asthma, ear infections, ADD, ADHD,
no ma'am.
autism, ADD, ADHD, peanut allergy. Does he have eczema, allergies, ear infections?
Just big, strong muscles. And a really smart brain.
I could see the difference in kids. I used to be a kindergarten teacher, so I know what kids
should look like and what they are looking like today. Both of my boys were reading by the age of 4.
My family thinks it's like voodoo, like we're crazy people, and how could you not vaccinate? But then every time they see our kids, they're like, it's
they
unbelievable
just seem
how healthy
so
they
ahead
are.
of the curve. By 18 months, she's singing songs, she can have conversation.
He's a very bright boy. He's 3 years old and he's learning Mandarin. He knows Spanish, he knows English, he's a bilingual child.
Sign language.
He knows sign language. He's a very bright child.
She does sign language, she speaks Spanish.
Yes, teach him Spanish.
2.
2, yep.
I'm speaking 3 languages.
Yep. So he's English, Spanish, and sign language.
They're very smart, and it's actually a challenge to challenge them with reading and math, and they're beyond their level.
They're all highly intelligent, bright-eyed, healthy children.
He's 3 months old and he is so strong.
He's super strong.
Hi.
He's super healthy. He's happy, smiling all the
Where's
time.
Bowie?
I can't get over this 4-month child is basically standing up. I'm just supporting her.
Do it
from
over
falling
there,
forward.
guys.
She is alert. She's so strong. This is the best therapy ever. Grab an unvaccinated baby and cuddle it.
Sorry.
It's perfect. Guys, I'm sorry to report to you. It's the truth. It's what we're seeing out here. We're not making this up. This is the people of America reporting to us their children that are vaccinated and injured, and their children that are unvaccinated and perfectly fine. Everything suddenly became lighter. The minute we invited the unvaccinated into our lives, everything went up like that. So you could do a Sid story, which broke our hearts, and then in would come an unvaccinated family. And it was not long before we could see that their story is the same over and over and over again. Just like the vaccine injured is the same over and over again.
Doing this for 15 years now, I'll share with you that the vaccinated kids are the sickest. The partially vaccinated kids are not as sick. Then the unvaccinated kids are the healthiest.
I've been in practice long enough that I can actually tell you that the unvaxxed kids are healthier. But I can also tell you that if the unvaxxed kids are a problem, then according to what's out there, there should be a lot of hospital admissions for my unvaxxed kids getting those things. And I'm seeing the opposite.
The most interesting stories that we did were the first child was injured, or maybe the second, and they go on to have more children and decide not to vaccinate because of the horrors of what's happened. And the difference between their unvaccinated child, same parents, same everything, is that unvaccinated child is 100% healthy.
Yeah, I have quite a few patients in my practice who have 2 children, and those are great controls because most of them didn't figure out right away, so their child got some vaccines, but they all stopped it fairly early on, and there's a huge difference between the 2 children and the level of how they were affected. But I mean, if you start looking and pulling in all those people who have that same experience, I think you're going to see the same thing across the board. The level of that second child and how they're affected is going to be much less, if at all, compared to the first child who was completely vaccinated.
Now, did you work this out in time for your next child?
Oh yeah, she's not vaccinated.
At all?
Absolutely not.
Not vitamin K, nothing. I know it's not vaccination, but nothing.
Nothing.
So how is she?
Fantastic. She is she's completely typical, beautiful, smart, caring for her brother. She's been on 1 antibiotic her whole life. She's a picture of health.
So your other 4 children have no vaccines?
No.
At all?
None.
Wow.
No.
And I better, how you describe them
Great.
compared to the vaccinated child?
They're much healthier than the oldest one. They fight disease faster.
My 4 unvaxxed kids are far healthier than my vaccinated child. She, when she gets sick, she gets sicker than the rest of them and more often than the rest of them. She's down for longer than the rest of them. Whether that's vaccine related or not, I don't know, but it seems to be an awful coincidence.
I was in the ER with my oldest all the time, and these 2 are never sick.
When my boys were little, we also had a lot of asthma and breathing treatments and antibiotics over and over and over. No ear infections, but all of those other things.
And these girls don't get what
And
your
these
other
girls,
boys do.
no.
She's never needed anything, and she's 2 years old. By this time, this child had already been at the hospital. He had, had dozens of antibiotics.
Lucas is the only one that's completely unvaxxed.
And it's interesting, he's our healthiest child. He has never been sick, never even so much as had a cold.
She's always the last one to get sick and the first one to get better.
His left ear, it was so significant, they actually had to kind of rebuild his eardrum from it. And that's, to me, that's one of the stark contrasts I see is our 13-month-old has had not a single ear infection.
Riley has had none. So Caden gets strep throat about 3 times a year. He also has allergies and ADHD. But we still love you. You're still very smart. So don't worry. Riley has been sick once.
My first is the sickest child that I have. She'll get sick. She'll be sick the longest. She'll be sick the hardest, actually. I mean, I guess she'll feel the worst pain or the most symptoms. Then my other 3, they'll be sick maybe a day and less than 24 hours and they're done and they're fine. Their body really knows how to fight whatever disease they come in contact with.
He is compensated through the vaccine injury compensation program.
My oldest 3 suffer with eczema, suffer with allergies, constipation, and they're the first ones to get sick.
The only time he's gone to doctor for checkups is because he's asked to go and wanted to see what it was like to go to the doctor's office.
You wanted to go to see a doctor? Okay, yeah, right.
Because Keenan has to go so often, and so he wanted to see what it was like to go.
Do your unvaccinated children have or the injuries that we see so commonly in the vaccinated? Do they have the ear infections and the antibiotics and the eczema, asthma, allergies?
None.
Nothing?
No.
So the results of your study is the unvaxxed are supersonic healthy and the vaxxed are not.
Yes, right.
So the conclusion of the unvaxxed study in your house is what?
That the unvaxxed kids are far healthier.
I don't worry about measles. I don't worry about polio. I don't worry about these things with her because she has a strong immune system. I worry about it with my son who is fully vaccinated because he would not be able to survive any of that, even though he was vaccinated for it.
It hurts me to watch the development, honestly, of my son because I see what my daughter could have done. And I feel an immense guilt for vaccinating her.
So in our scenario, we've got, a control for a lot of different variables. Same genetics, same mother and father, same environment, all 3 children. And the key discriminator that makes these children different is the presence or degree to which they're vaccinated.
Have a look at these vaccinated, unvaccinated families, which are controlled for genetics, they're controlled for their food intake, their environment, and everything else, and consistently we're seeing the unvaccinated, never vaccinated children are far healthier.
So we have here, ear infections, antibiotics, high-pitched scream from the vaccinated, unvaccinated, none of the above. And that became probably the most exciting revelation of the whole tour.
Now that I've seen so much of it and seen so many vaccinated and unvaccinated family members with the same thread, it's undeniable that an unvaccinated child's immune system is going to be that much more functional, that their brains actually function better. And when you understand how vaccines work and what the components of vaccines, including aluminum and all of the inflammation, do to anybody, no matter what your age, it makes complete sense that in the long run, that child's going to be much more functional and much healthier and able to do battle against any disease that comes along, the majority of which have no matching vaccine.
When you get out into the population and you start to meet people who, because they've heard of our stories, have not vaccinated their children, and you see these wonderful, healthy, happy, robust children, then it just makes all the difference in the world.
And these are the children that actually now we need to protect above all others. Not force them to be vaccinated by rule of law, but to protect them because they're going to be looking after the damaged children in the future.
There's no question about what we saw. What we all collectively saw was the same thing. Health, health, health with the unvaccinated, injury, injury, injury with the vaccinated. Same story.
That doesn't mean they're never going to get anything. The only thing,
it says to me, my kids are vaccine free. My kids will never, ever, ever be injured, ever. With 100% certainty, they'll never be injured.
I mean, if I was a new parent listening to these unvaccinated stories over and over and over again, it would be game over for me. I'm going your way.
Yeah, I don't understand why you wouldn't. You know, if you're seeing an unvaccinated child, completely healthy, thriving, alert, and then you see all these sick kids that are constantly going to the doctor and on antibiotics and vaccinated, and you see all the eczema that they have, or asthma, allergies, all these different things that kids are affected with. Choosing a healthy child versus an unhealthy child, that's really your choice.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.